So, I just came back from the latest movie by Robert Eggers, and I have to tell you, it's got me messed up. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. It's a movie I've been looking forward to for some time, even though, admittedly, I didn't like The Witch too much. Don't chop my head off for that. I technically liked it. Same goes for this movie, and I'll get into that a bit. Everything about the technicality of his movies are, in my opinion, near perfect. This movie was really weird, unique, and poetic, and a little experimental, but I really enjoyed it. Let's get into the review for The Lighthouse. But before we get started, I would really appreciate it if you guys just hit the subscribe button down below, like the video, leave a comment, hit that bell, all the good stuff to get all of our content when it comes out. I promise you guys you're going to love it. With that out of the way, let's talk about The Lighthouse. So first off, The Lighthouse is, like I said, the newest movie by Robert Eggers. His previous film, his debut film, was The Witch. It made waves with horror fans. I am a horror fan, and I watched it, and honestly, although, again, technically impressive and very creepy, it wasn't something that I enjoyed by the end of it. I wasn't entirely entertained. And that's just my opinion, and honestly, it's a minority opinion. I understand that. I've talked to a lot of people and a lot of film critics and film addicts who love this movie, The Witch. But I wasn't too into it, and I've seen it a couple times now. So I went into this movie thinking, okay, I'm going to be technically impressed, but again, the story and the engagement might be lackluster on my end. However, I was pleasantly surprised. The Lighthouse takes place in 1890, and we are introduced to these two men who are brought to the island to take care of a lighthouse. Their names are Thomas Wake and Ephraim Winslow. Wake is very much a seaward man. He talks very much like a pirate would, or what you would imagine a pirate would talk like in all the animated and Hollywood versions of pirates. Says things like ye and ar and, pirate stuff. And then we have Ephraim Winslow, who has more of a North New York, maybe New Hampshire, Maine area, that kind of accent. I'm not entirely sure, but very particular accents. I read somewhere that Robert Eggers was very specific with what accents his character should have and how they should pronounce specific words. So the accents are very important to the overall structure of the film, and it really aided in the characters in the film. We're introduced to these two men, and they get into it right away. They set up in their beds, which is in the same room. And Willem Dafoe's character, I'll just refer to him as Wake from now on. He's an old man, he farts, and he doesn't have any shame whatsoever. There's Ephraim Winslow, Robert Pattinson's character, who a little bit more conservative. He doesn't like talking too much, whereas Wake loves to talk and loves to have conversations. So already, right off the bat, they're butting heads. Throughout the film, we get to see their daily routine. Winslow is appointed duties that are kind of bottom of the barrel stuff, like painting the lighthouse, taking out their piss and shit, throwing it off the coast, that sort of stuff. Stuff that he doesn't really want to do, and we get the feeling that he's not a really dedicated worker. Wake's job, on the other hand, is to basically just look after the actual light in the lighthouse. He doesn't seem to do anything else but cook and drink and always find himself up inside the lighthouse. And you begin to realize that it's not just a job to him anymore, it's more of an obsession. Maybe over the years, as the more he does this, he's become more obsessed with the light, and it becomes more of a fanatic thing rather than a job. It's really weird. Then there's the aspect of Winslow wanting to go up into the lighthouse and have a turn to look after the lighthouse. But Wake says absolutely not. The lighthouse is his. Nobody else is allowed to do that, and he will never do that. From that point on, there's this huge tension between the two characters as Winslow really wants to get up in there, and Wake doesn't really want him there. So now we have the main conflict, and as both men are on the island alone together, just feeding off each other and their different personalities, they slowly descend into madness. And that is one of the best aspects of this film, is that gradual descent into lunacy. In the beginning portions of their descent into madness is actually kind of humorous. There's levity in the film, there are jokes. Robert Eggers doesn't shy away from any fart jokes either. So It brings a little bit of humor to the film that you didn't really expect, but actually works really well. And I found myself laughing out loud at some points. But as the movie progresses, that humor kind of goes by the wayside, and the focus is more on the characters' minds and what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, and how they feel about each other. Without getting too much into it, we learn things about Winslow's character, we learn things about Wake's character that you didn't necessarily know in the beginning, so there's that element of twists and turns. Honestly, this movie had it all. It had everything. Some of the most amazing aspects of this film do come from the technicalities of the filmmaking. First off, let's talk about the aspect ratio. It was a 1:19:1 aspect ratio, which basically means square. So it really felt like I was watching something from the 1920s, 1930s, and it really brought the element of vintageness to the film, and I felt like I was watching an old fable from way back in the day, some fisherman's tale. Coupled with the lighting and the camera angles, it really looked like I was watching an old movie, and seeing that on the big screen was really cool. The audio was specifically recorded mono to give, again, that old vintage feel. Robert Eggers specifically wrote the script knowing that he was going to do this in black and white. I read somewhere that he actually wrote on the front of the script, must be filmed in black and white, this aspect ratio, this audio recording, this audio mix, everything. He had it all planned out from the very beginning how he wanted this to seem. That aided in the experience of watching a really vintage type of tale. It also upped the creep factor when it came to tension and when it came to the Lovecraftian kind of horror feeling that you're getting while you're watching the movie. And of course, can't talk about this movie without talking about the acting. Admittedly, haven't seen much with Robert Pattinson, and the things that I have seen him in were his early work that nobody wants to really acknowledge anymore. Him in this movie, he was incredible. The acting was unbelievable to me, watching Robert Pattinson slowly spiral into this madness that he can't quite get a grip on, feeding off of Willem Dafoe. It was amazing to watch. I read that they really didn't interact with each other at all on set other than acting with each other, so a lot of that raw tension and that raw violence between each other and that raw argumentative feeling and vibe they were giving each other, that was all real feeling. Masterful Willem Dafoe, we've seen him crazy in so many things. This one really takes the cake in my opinion. They worked with each other so well, and the acting was so believable. It wasn't the type of acting you're going to see in a true story kind of film or a modern day retelling of something. They acted in a way that, again, fed into the technicalities of the film, where it felt like you were watching a vintage tale, an old seaman's tale. It just felt so authentic in that regard. Overall, this movie was a real trip. It gets into really weird, dreamlike, hallucination kind of territory. At so many points in the movie, I didn't know if what I was watching was real or not. Even by the ending, I didn't even know what I watched was real or not. And it was like playing a magic trick on my mind. I had to talk about it at length to my buddy who I saw it with, and we really couldn't wrap our heads around what we just watched without really diving into the metaphors and the allegories and all the stories and inspirations behind the film. Overall, really enjoyed the film. I would definitely give it a 4 out of 5 lighthouses, I think. Wasn't a perfect film to me, only because by the end of it, I didn't fully understand it, admittedly. For something to get a perfect score, I want to be able to fully understand the film by the end of it. But where the film shines is the technicality and the filmmaking process, and I really appreciate that. So it gets a near perfect score for me. So that's it for the Lighthouse review. If you liked that review, go ahead and like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. I look forward to more movie reviews as I watch more movies.